What if Charles Xavier trained Anakin Skywalker? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. For the second time in his life, Obi-Wan finds himself standing before the Jedi Council to deliver a report on their actions on Naboo. While this mission and its follow-up trip to Lego were thankfully not as grim, he still finds himself troubled as he explains the plot they had uncovered. More personally, about Anakin's conduct throughout the mission. They were sent there to arrest a CIS scientist who was building bombs to release the Blue Shadow virus. While they succeeded, some of his virus managed to infect Ahsoka and Padme, nearly killing them. One look at the council members is enough to tell him that they share his worries. Anakin has always been brash and hot-headed, but this time it nearly got the better of him. Obi-Wan recalls how he rushed headlong into danger, cutting down droids without thinking. While no one got hurt, a part of him wonders what he would have done if those had been people. Yet he dares not voice those worries to the Jedi Council. Instead, Yoda furrows his brow, and Mace appears stormy. The debate on what to do rages long and hard. Some, like Plo Koon and Kit Fisto, have fought beside him and seen the many positive traits of Anakin. Like Obi-Wan, they insist he is still young and will have time to learn as he grows. Yet others like Mace and Ki-Adi-Mundi insist that this is troubling behavior and something they cannot ignore.
How long will it be until he learns? You said that he will grow out of this, but when will that be? A month? A year from now? 10?
When do you dictate an egg to hatch? It is not up to us.
That may be so, but we are at war. We do not have time to wait patiently and observe an egg. And what is it you suggest we do, Master Windu? Anakin does not always learn from the Jedi Order. He feels stifled by pressure, and badgering him more will only cause more problems.
A solution I have. If not a Jedi, then perhaps another. Tell me, know the tale of Professor Charles Xavier the Wise, do you?
There is a slow rumble of recognition, as the name is well known by many of the Jedi, and the Republic as a whole. He was perhaps one of the galaxy's most respected philosophers, whose school of thought was built around cooperation, empathy, and understanding. He had long advocated for interspecies cooperation in an increasingly human-centric galaxy. Even as accusations of CIS sympathies emerge, he continues to work with gifted aliens across the galaxy to encourage them to bring their talents into the Republic.
I will grant that Professor Xavier is gifted, but he is no Jedi. Will he know how to handle one such as Anakin?
Figure out that answer. There is only one way.
A few have their concerns. One of his controversial ideas was the idea of accepting different philosophies regarding the Force. Yet, the others nod their head in agreement. It is a bold plan, and they agree to give it a chance. When Anakin hears the news, he is initially upset, thinking that the Jedi wish to be rid of him. However, Obi-Wan assures him that this is not them removing him from the Jedi, but instead expanding his horizons so he may learn more beyond them. Ahsoka accompanies Anakin as they make their way to the Xavier mansion in one of the upper districts of Coruscant. Professor X welcomes Anakin, but insists that he will not just take him.
I require a show of skill, my boy, to understand your level of skill. A simple demonstration will do.
The professor taps a button, and several training droids emerge. Smiling, Anakin and Ahsoka ignite their lightsabers and rush to confront them. Their lightsabers flash as the two whirl in the air, cutting through them with ease. Their powers pulse across the mansion, throwing droids aside and using the environment around them for support. Professor X observes them. The two work well together, complementing each other's skills and powers. At times, they do not need to talk and simply share a look to form a plan. It is impressive, but he also sees less flattering traits. Anakin grows aggressive at times, too aggressive. To his allies, he becomes overprotective, sometimes taking unnecessary risks to protect Ahsoka. Still, it is good enough for Professor X to take him as a student. Anakin and Ahsoka soon meet the other students he has gathered over the years. There's a Jedi named Valdis, who is a talented engineer, a Trandoshan hunter named Barda, a changeling, Kato, and a night sister called Weena. All 6 of them begin to train together, and while individually they are formidable, their team efforts leave much to be desired. They struggle to cooperate, and conflict arises. For Anakin, who is used to military life, he expects obedience from those with him, but the 4 students follow their own rank and expect themselves to be equal. If there must be a leader, all of them seem to think they would make a better choice. Valdis constantly challenges Anakin, daring him to fight, while Barda regards the rest of them warily. Kato sticks to himself, and Weena and Anakin get along like oil and water. After one particularly disastrous training session, Weena growls and tosses her bow aside. It was the same issue as ever, a lack of cooperation. and everyone preferring to do their own thing instead of sticking together.
Another fine mission thanks to our fearless leader.
What did you say? Things wouldn't have gotten that bad if you'd stuck to the plan instead of running off to chase fleeing droids. Or Barda didn't keep trying to rip apart the dead and just kept moving.
There is glory to be had with this scorekeeper. I will not let that opportunity pass up.
So you decided to just snap defeat from the jaws of victory?
Perhaps you should make a strategy that we can accept instead of just dictating your desires.
Tactics are not for debate. They aren't meant to appease everyone. They're meant to win the battle.
This is why I work alone.
It is also why you shall die alone. You should have followed me.
Figures. The Jedi dictating their whims onto everyone else. What else is new? Just like always.
What did you say?
He reaches for his lightsaber while Weena palms her vibroblades. Valdis and Cato look at each other warily, reaching for their own blasters. Barda hisses and unslings her hunting rifle. But before anyone can attack, a burst of energy throws them back, and Professor X approaches, his hoverpad moving in between them. The older man levels a hard glare at each of them, one significant to shame them all into lowering their weapons. He fixes that look on Anakin, though.
I selected all of you because you are the best of the best and show great promise. But what is it I see here? You squabbling like children. As if that wasn't the cause of this disaster in the first place.
Apologies, Professor.
The others mutter similar words, but Charles is not done. He dismisses the rest of them to their chambers while calling Anakin to follow him. Once they are alone, he shakes his head and regards the boy.
You see yourself as their leader. I appreciate the initiative you are taking, but make no mistake, this is no military or the Jedi Order.
I can see that. I doubt any of them would cut it in the military even if they tried to enter it.
No, they wouldn't. All of them grew up wary of the Republic. Their people were always outcasts in our galaxy. They prefer to keep to themselves, and yet they are willing to stand here.
But not obey.
Why would they? Tell me, were you not a slave growing up? Would you obey a man simply because you were told to?
That's different. I had no choice in the matter. They had their freedom all their life.
And why do you expect them to just follow you, without having won their trust first?
I have the most experience in combat. I've commanded armies before. Why shouldn't I lead?
Because this is not the Jedi Order, my boy. Our roles are not set here. That is for us to decide. I do not blame you. In your order, everything is laid out before you. But here, this is a chance to find your own path.
Anakin does not know what to say after he hears this. He looks down at his feet. He had not considered that.
I suppose I never had that choice.
Yet rather than be angry, the professor places a hand on his shoulder and offers to show him the better way. The chamber hums with a low vibration as Cerebro powers up. Professor X lowers the helmet over his head and gestures for Anakin to step closer. He then places a hand on his shoulder.
Close your eyes. Not to command the Force. Not to bend it. Listen.
Anakin frowns, but obeys. At first, he feels only the familiar surge within himself, the power of the Force rippling through him. Then something changes. Threads appear, faint at first, then countless and unending. Voices, minds, lives. He feels them as if each is a star scattered across the galaxy, yet bound together in one vast, luminous web.
This is the Force?
Part of it. What you have been taught to wield as power is, in truth, communion. The will of life itself. And life never speaks with one voice. It is the chorus of all.
For a moment, Anakin can only breathe, unsettled by the sheer immensity of what he's touched.
We are all connected in it. The Jedi claim that, but they also like to claim that only they can harness it. But I never believed that. All of those you see before you, Valdis, Barda, Cato, and Weena, I sense the Force in all of them. It might not be as powerful, but it flows through them as any other in what they do.
Their faces are the same, but Cerebro shows what Anakin never notices. Their thoughts, their emotions, each one unique. When they finish, Charles instructs Anakin to train them again, this time as a true team. The training program that Professor X organizes is more brutal than before, ensuring that no one can succeed alone, and this forces them to work together. It initially seems simple enough to capture a citadel, but as they draw closer, traps emerge, hidden sharpshooters, turrets, and electrified walls. At first, orders are ignored, arguments flare. Anakin bristles, but then calms them and begins to analyze the situation. Rather than bark orders, he calls to each one and urges them to handle specific tasks, giving them trust instead of demanding obedience. Valdez's engineering disables an electrified wall, Kato's shapeshifting creates a distraction for the droids, and Barda begins taking out sharpshooters. With the wall clear, he sends Ahsoka to begin capturing it. Even Weena, whom Anakin clashes with the most, saves him when a structure begins to collapse. The lesson takes root slowly, but it grows. Ahsoka flourishes as Anakin puts more trust in her, while the others begin to understand why Anakin is the leader of their team. They see him not as an arrogant Jedi, but as a true leader. Soon enough, Professor X expands their roster and begins recruiting more men from the 501st into their army. These clones take part in their exercises. Professor X extends his training to them and encourages the clones to think for themselves and study their individual skills. The clones, too, begin to speak as brothers, not soldiers. They laugh, argue, and improvise just as Anakin and his team might work. With their success, Professor X deems them ready to begin operating in the galaxy as a proper fighting force. The Republican Chancellor welcomes their aid while the CIS rampages across the galaxy. They do not operate within the standard confines of the military, but as an independent fighting unit. This leaves them to handle more flexible and unorthodox missions. Many Jedi soon to take notice of this and see how strange their mode of operation is. Rather than have a single leader, Professor X encourages flexibility, and this includes a rotating system where the leader of a mission is determined by their specialty and the requirements rather than a ranking system. At the same time, these missions are also distinct from those done by the Republic military, as they do not focus on combat alone. Others include sabotage, assassination, and infiltration. The last thing Professor X wants is to be another arm of the Senate and organize missions on his own. These can include disaster relief, environmental efforts, and even protest against Republican allies and senators if he finds they are abusing their power. This is controversial enough on its own, but they make things worse when Professor X expresses willingness to cooperate with individuals in the CIS. All of this leaves him with many rivals in the Senate who wish to get rid of him. However, while their methods might be unorthodox, there is also no denying their effectiveness in battle. Across the galaxy, this team strikes, combining their talents and overcoming any challengers. A part of that is thanks to Professor X, whose immense force abilities and access to Cerebro allow him to enhance his force abilities far beyond anything the Jedi can do on their own. This allows him to learn about critical points that require his X-Men's attention. Professor X sits in the Cerebro chamber, the hum of the machine echoing in the silence. His mind stretches outward, riding the lattice of consciousness that binds the galaxy together. For hours, he drifts in that sea, tracing the eddies of fear, the bright flares of hope, the faint whispers of despair. Things have been growing darker lately, as if something is pulling at the galaxy's seams and weaving darkness within. He has been chasing those elusive signs, searching for anything. He closes his eyes and plants himself into the Force, feeling the energy pulse around him. And then, there is a tremor. It is not the sharp edge of rage or the wild storm of battle. It is deeper, coiled and masked. For a moment, he cannot even define it, only feel the unease spreading across his body. It slithers beneath the surface, a shadow beneath starlight. Rather than trying in vain to identify it, he instead looks to track it down and understand where it might be. When he clears his mind, Charles feels a faint pulse.
Anakin, I sense something. A wound. Hidden, but growing.
The dark side?
Perhaps. But whoever weaves it is skilled. Skilled enough to hide their hand from even me. Still, I sense its trail leading to a place of fire and industry in the Outer Rim. A factory, corrupted for some dark purpose.
Then let me check it out.
Within hours, the squad descends on the factory world. Thick clouds of smoke mask their approach, allowing their team to move unnoticed. Vast furnaces belch smoke into a choking sky as towers loom like spears of rust. Security is heavy, droids marching in endless ranks, their metal boots clanging against steel walkways. A small army of workers and engineers move between buildings, but one sticks out. It lacks the same traffic, but its machines operate nonetheless. Barda fires a grapple cable and scales the wall to a perch. She unslings her rifle and takes a deep breath as Anakin channels his force energy to help her, steadying her aim while she takes out the sentries. Ahsoka, meanwhile, darts between shadows with Weena, identifying sentries.
It appears to be all droids here. Only a couple of human overseers. The factory is busy.
All droids. That is typically a sign that someone wants to save money working non-stop.
or does not want any unwanted ears. I bet we can pull some data from here.
Let's start with figuring out what's going on here. Cato infiltrates first, shifting into the guise of a foreman to unlock inner gates. Rather than enter right away, he lowers the ray shield so Vardis's body melts into 1,000 worm-like creatures and slips through the door. He begins to fry the security system and enters the security room, where he disables the guard. Once those are down, Anakin and Barda lead the team inside, Weena taking the rear with her energy bow. Ahsoka and Anakin cut through the patrols with swift strikes, lightsabers flashing in arcs of blue. Rex coordinates the clones, redirecting fire to take out any droids who might get in their way. Barda bares her teeth and sticks to the high ground, sniping droids. She sniffs the air and frowns, looking over to one of the fallen droid transporting raw materials. Her eyes widen in surprise at the sight of the crystals inside.
This is no ordinary factory. They're refining kyber crystals.
Are you sure?
I am. I know that scent anywhere. Well then, whatever the CIS intends to use these crystals for, we can't let them use them. They must be destroyed.
Weena places several sentry wards she's crafted with her magics to keep the watch of what's happening. And through it all, Charles's voice threads through their minds, guiding them. They intend to recapture the crystals and take them back to Coruscant. But as they approach the core, Professor X suddenly feels a stab of pain, as if something is aware of their power. Cato infiltrates the control center just as he feels the first explosion and analyzes the systems.
Someone is overloading the core. They're setting this whole place to blow.
Everyone out! Valdis and Cato find one of the Overseer droids trying to organize the destruction of all the data and knock it to the ground. They drag it between them just as charges detonate along fuel lines, collapsing towers and sheets of fire. When they emerge into the burning night, the factory is rubble, but the Kyber cache is gone, and the galaxy will never know how close it came to a weapon of terrible power. In the Chancellor's office, Palpatine watches the reports scroll across his datapad. The lines of his mouth tighten. His voice remains smooth as silk.
These X-Men are so effective. Too effective.
He leans back in his chair, hooded eyes narrowing. Professor X nearly pieced the veil of his secrecy. He was closer to finding something alone than the Jedi were with all their resources. They must be stopped. Worse still, Anakin grows under his tutelage, his potential widening in ways Palpatine does not control. The Sith Lord smiles faintly, coldly. Already he began to whisper in the Council's ear. Xavier speaks of other philosophies. He courts Night Sisters, Changelings, and even Separatists to join his inner circle. Some might see it as a threat, or even treason. Palpatine simply needs to court these thoughts further. He sows doubt in the purity of the Jedi way. Perhaps he is compromised. The first seeds are planted. It doesn't take much for senators who already distrust the professor. While he might be admired for his philosophy, others believe he has no place on the battlefield. They believe that if he truly wishes to play a general, then he should do so under the supervision of the Republic military, especially if he's accepting allies of the CIS. While Professor X defends himself, citing that not all members of the species who join the CIS support their leader's decisions.
We currently stand on a galaxy divided by war, thanks to this horrible conflict. But the language of our senators only expands this division. They treat all aliens as if they had committed the same treason. Yet how many of these people have I recruited to fight on the front lines? Just as many of our senators, you can be sure. I will not recruit based on where a being comes from, but on the talent they bring.
But fighting senators is nothing new. What's surprising is the Jedi weighing in on the conflict. While they normally prefer to remain apolitical, in this situation they offer their opinion and side against Professor X. They know he's a being strong in the Force, and was prepared to look the other way with that. However, what they cannot ignore is his radical philosophy regarding the Force. Instead of supporting the Jedi Code, he advocates exploring other ideas and understanding the cultures and philosophies of all beings touched by the Force, even those who overtly dabble in the dark side, like the Night Sisters. To the Jedi, that sounds a lot like heresy, and many condemn these teachings. They distrust it so much that they order Anakin and Ahsoka to be recalled. While Professor X might be able to continue his mission for the time being, they are being watched closely and will not have any contact with the Jedi, especially one as impenetrable as Anakin. When the young Jedi hears this, he is stunned. For the first time, he truly feels like he belonged with the professor. Charles had treated him like a son, and with Ahsoka and the others, they were able to cooperate in ways that they never could within the Jedi Order. Yet when Professor X hears this, he offers them a sad smile and shakes his head.
Do not fight your order on this one, young one. I know it hurts, but there is a time to choose your battles.
Anakin, although wishing to protest, bows his head and walks off. Yet, rather than admit defeat, Professor X continues his mission. He ignores the protests and responds to them with speeches and vows to continue fighting for what he believes in. The remaining X-Men reaffirm their commitment to this cause as well, but are now greeted with suspicion and lack the support of the Republic. They do not have the credit or transportation for continuing their operations, but they make do with Charles's personal finances and a repurposed starship he's managed to build. Aside from that, Valdez continues to tinker with the droid they captured. While it initially seems like a normal droid they can take data from, he is surprised to see how complex the security measures are. Far too advanced for a simple factory droid. Valdez spends hours taking it apart and trying to learn what it is in its brain, to no avail. The security systems keep him back and are unlike anything he's ever seen. It is almost like the processor is learning and adapting countermeasures for every attempt he makes to force his way in. These efforts do not go unnoticed by the rest of the X-Men, and Weena offers her assistance. When technology alone cannot work, she relies on the magics of her people to offer their aid. As the components are set down, her fingers begin to glow a sickly green as tendrils slip into the machine, entering its components and fiddling with its working pieces. She grunts and feels the resistance trying to push her back. Weena does not give in so easily, channeling the force around her and begins to push back at it, eating away at the firewalls bit by bit until she feels it giving way before her, and then she sees the files. Holograms flicker in the air, showing immense superstructures, conduits, weapon cores, and chambers built to house titanic kyber crystals. Energy beams arc in demonstration, carving through asteroids in simulation. But then, something stranger. Shipping records, components drawn not from separatist shipyards, but from Republic space. Things that were pulled away from shipyards and mines discreetly, in small enough numbers that no one would notice. Shipments were rerouted through shell companies, redirected to unlisted sites far away from any known CIS installation.
This makes no sense.
Xavier studies the data in silence, his brow furrowing. The whispers in the forest had warned him of darkness, but not this. A shadow born in the heart of the Republic itself. But at the very heart of the Senate, Palpatine uses their very attack on his factory as proof. Though it had been marked as belonging to the Techno-Union, in truth, he altered the data so it belonged to a faction still loyal to the Republic. With distrust running high, there now comes a just cause to arrest them.
Professor Xavier has hidden behind philosophy to mask his true intentions. He meddles with dangerous powers, defies the Jedi Code, and undermines this Republic in wartime. I call upon him now to submit himself for questioning or face the consequences.
That night, the Jedi arrived, accompanied by the clones. They command that the professor step out and allow himself to be apprehended for questioning. Anakin walks among them, his expression grim, yet he can barely hide his disgust for the situation. Charles meets them in the courtyard, hovering calmly in his chair. When he does, Anakin bows his head shamefully and can't bear to meet his gaze.
So, it has come to this.
Professor, you are charged with sedition, with corrupting the Jedi, and spreading dangerous ideologies. Surrender peacefully.
How quickly truth becomes a weapon in the hands of fear. Do you expect me to run?
Anakin senses something is off as he speaks. His hand twitches, and eyes widen. Before he can say anything, Cato reveals himself, having donned the professor's appearance, and leaps to his feet. He punches Mace across the face and fires upon the clones. Barda roars defiantly and fires from the trees, while Valdez appears from the ground, bursting through a maintenance pipe. Anakin takes a step forward, torn as he watches Cato try to strike Mace, who shatters his baton with a single swing. But before he can follow up, an energy bow fires and forces him to sidestep. Weena. Jedi surge forward, leading the clones to confront them. Anakin dodges Valdez's blow and lets the others take care of him. Instead, he rushes towards the spot where the arrows came from. He deflects the next shot from it and closes his eyes, sensing her presence. Then he throws his lightsaber at this spot and sees movement. He prepares for another energy bolt, but the arrow that strikes isn't a plasma shot, but a wooden arrow. The object is so unexpected that it almost hits him, but at the last second he uses the Force to catch it, and then notices something tied to the end, a data chip. Another arrow fires, but Anakin sees it and lets out a burst of Force power, knocking the girl from the tree.
You're late, Jedi.
She points at the sky and sees a starship taking off, carrying the professor to safety. He does not need to verify it. He can sense it.
The truth lies within.
She bows her head just as the clones approach. Anakin takes the data chip and slips it into his pocket, and then watches as she and the other X-Men are led away. Anakin stares at the data, making his way back to his chambers, where he begins to play it. The droids recording the shipments, the proof. His eyes widen as realization crashes down, and the shipments led not to separatists at all, but to estates, laboratories, and hidden holdings. All are owned by Palpatine. Anakin stares at this, the faint glow of the computer reflecting in his eyes as he considers what this truly means. Palpatine had betrayed them. Days later, Anakin and Ahsoka present this information within the Senate, showcasing the source of all this material, all gathered without the Senate's approval and refined without their knowledge.
These are Kyber crystals, the same crystals used in a Jedi's lightsaber. As you expect, these have immense cultural and practical significance in our order, and yet we have reports of thousands of them being taken without our permission.
All for the sake of the war effort.
All done without the Jedi or Senate's permission.
For the first time, a hint of uncertainty crosses the Chancellor's face as he looks around. Senators were willing to look the other way on many things, but this was not one of them. Not when they were left in the dark as well.
I assure everyone all of this was done with the Republic's best interests in mind.
If that is the case, then why did you hide it?
To get them as quickly as possible. I knew that if this was made public, I knew the CIS would try to strike. Surely you can see the need for that, young Skywalker.
If that is the lie, then you are a traitor to the Republic. And if that is the truth, then you no longer see yourself as a servant of the people. Instead, you see yourself as above it. Whatever the case, the answer is the same. I implore the Senate to arrest him immediately.
This time, there is no question about it, and most senators vote in favor. Palpatine's face reddens in anger, and he suddenly leaps through the air, disappearing through the nearest repulsor pod. As he pushes his way past the luckless senator, guards are called after him, but a lightsaber appears in his hands, and he cuts through them. Men shout for him to be arrested and for a search to be organized, but the Chancellor disappears in the chaos. Anakin looks at the Senate and calls for the release of the X-Men to help him. With emotions running high, they are ready to do anything to hunt him down. Soon, the X-Men find themselves back in Charles's mansion, where they begin using Cerebro to try to track Palpatine down. Anakin closes his eyes and places the helmet on his head. In an instant, he feels the weight of the Force crashing down on him, as the presence of not just his companions, but countless souls bears down on him. And yet, through the mass, he manages to pick out one figure, who just for a second lets his mask slip. They find Palpatine in his hidden sanctum, deep beneath Coruscant.
So, the prodigal knight brings his misfits and outcasts. Do you truly think you can oppose me?
Lightning crackles at his fingertips, casting the chamber in jagged light. Ahsoka manages to deflect it as the others fan out. Valdis appears with both fists raised and sends shockwaves on the ground. Palpatine leaps back, dodging shots from Cato and Barda, while Weena takes aim and fires. Palpatine whirls aside from that blow and hurls debris toward them like a blaster turret. Weena uses her magics to shatter them apart, but a few graze her sides and leave her stumbling. Anakin appears from the smoke, lightsaber flashing as he slashes down at him. Palpatine catches the blow as he presses against him. Cato adds to the confusion by shifting into a mirror image to confuse him, yet Palpatine sees through this and kicks him aside while slashing one of Vardis' arms. Barda aims a net, but Palpatine catches the electrified device and hurls it back. Ahsoka leaps through the chaos and joins Anakin, their lightsabers flashing in unison. Ahsoka and the X-Men hurl themselves into the fray, countering the storm of Sith power with blades and fire and magic. Anakin duels him head-on, keeping his attention on him, as he is the only one capable of taking his blows. He continues to absorb Palpatine's strikes to let the others recover, but as he blocks another blow, Palpatine puts all his strength into it and sends him flying back. The Chancellor smiles and twirls his lightsaber, leaping up and preparing to cut him down. And then, he freezes. Palpatine's eyes widen as he remains trapped. It is Xavier who ends it. His chair glides silently into the chamber. Enough! Invisible pressure slams into Palpatine. His lightning falters. His grin twists into a snarl as Xavier's will crashes down upon his own. For the first time, the Dark Lord is forced to his knees, his mind dragged into submission by a power unlike any he has faced. Palpatine screams, clawing against the weight of Charles's presence. But Xavier only presses harder, his voice a chorus of every mind he's ever touched.
Your lies end here, Chancellor. The galaxy will see you for what you truly are.
Palpatine is dragged back to the Senate, where he faces judgment, to be exiled to one of their most distant prisons and guarded by the Jedi. Meanwhile, Professor X is pardoned of all crimes. While there still remains some controversy, He has gone from a villain to a hero in the public eye thanks to his X-Men's actions. Meanwhile, Anakin and Ahsoka choose to leave the Jedi Order entirely and work with the X-Men full-time to help handle the problems of the galaxy. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.